Lockdowns. Bad hair day from hell.
Hello and welcome to the Mark and Pete Show.
Oh, yes.
Well, many people have been rushing to the barbers and hair salons, desperate to have their hair cut. In fact, even Downing Street confirmed that Mr. Johnson did have a haircut before he paid tribute to the Duke of Edinburgh in the House of Commons. Well, there are some good things about that, because many people have been concerned as hair salons going out of business. We have the answers to what needs to be done going forward. There are some concerns that some people believe that this is a little bit premature. COVID-19 is still upon us. But there is the bigger concern about lockdown locks. And here's a thought. Mary, Mary, with lockdown hair so scary, how do your follicles now grow? With silver showing, and wiry ones flowing, and once pretty braids tangled in a row. Clergyman Pete, you're looking a bit wild and silvery. What are you going to do with your lockdown locks?
Well, there are two options. One is I could keep them and go for the silver-haired preacher look with them.
Yes.
Hair flow back. Probably I'll have it all cut off. I was hearing about a comment someone was making on the internet saying about lockdown hair, this problem. We keep having lockdowns. So this time, as soon as you can, have your hair cut really short. Just so that it doesn't grow too long during the next lockdown.
Well, on that point, I was going to ask.
Well, my hair has grown long and out of control, yes.
Well, it is, but do you know, the odd thing is, even though the Downing Street claimed that Boris Johnson has had his hair cut, it seems like the person who did it perhaps had been to the pub just beforehand.
Surely not. No, not allowed. Yes, and just as before we go any further, I think I should point out that in the Bible, it does say, this is to the Levitical priests, but it does say, they shall not shave their heads or let their locks grow long. They shall surely trim the hair of their heads. And I think we can apply this to today.
Yes.
We always like an extra serious Bible reading just to set us off. But yes, lockdown hair, it seems not to be a serious issue, but there are some underlying serious points. There's problems to do with lockdowns. One of it affects hairdressing, but there are ramifications from that, aren't there?
Well, I think that one of the things, as we've already pointed out, is that many people have been in a lockdown situation full of stress. Now, what do we mean by that? That people are either worried about their job, not being able to see their friends and family, and the idea of not being able to socially engage is actually a stressful situation. Those things have been brought to mind, and people's mental well-being does affect, ironically, what can often happen with their physical demeanour.
Mm-hmm.
And this can also mean that people maybe suffer from alopecia or possibly even just straight loss of hair. Now, this is something that we're not making up, but many medical practitioners have pointed this out. So I suppose, Clergyman Pete, the idea of perhaps getting out and about for some is a good thing, especially those who are concerned about seeing their wiry locks getting out of control and perhaps not looking as slick and as well manicured as they would like.
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, I mean...
it's a state of mind, isn't it?
Yes,
Just as much as a state of hair.
It is recognised that although for some people their appearance means nothing to them, even then they're still going to care for themselves to a certain extent, have a wash. And part of it is having your hair cut or at least styled in some way. Normally that's done by a professional, not doing it yourself or a family member. But so it does affect your state of mind. Because of the efforts after the Second World War to rebuild the countries that have been affected by it, we found that there were lots of people put into encampments where they simply were depressed. Nothing was going well. Everything had fallen apart. But if they were given a bath, had a haircut, sometimes had their eyebrows trimmed, made to look neat, this improved the whole mindset. This is a recognised effect of you behave as though you're going to a job in the morning, everything's fine, you're looking smart, you're looking sharp. You start to feel it, and then in the end it becomes true for you. And that the opposite is happening here. It may be that the businesses are reopening, you're going to your job, everything is going to be fine, but you look terrible, so you continue to feel terrible.
Indeed. I had noticed, and this even actually has befallen many a professional presenter on TV, where people have been going on television with, shall we say, grey showing, strange outgrowings of colourings of hair.
Yes.
And I would imagine that people would have felt also that this would sort of expose their perhaps self-image a little bit, meaning that if you didn't know that somebody had actually coloured their hair and it becomes exposed, that in itself might be a point of discussion for many.
Yes, yeah.
So it's actually the feeling of not just so much about being in with the trend, so whether you've got now a wiry beard when really you had a sculptured beard, or whether you had a particular good crop of trendy hair, if you were seen to be looking younger when suddenly you're now exposing that actually you had a full head of grey hair, that in itself is not good. So people's mental state is exposed here. And this is probably the worst part as well. There have been some bad self-grooming examples. So people have perhaps tried things like colouring their hair, and instead of having a nice sort of blonde-haired finish, they've ended up with some green monstrosity, which is in itself a bit alarming. And of course, not being able to get to a professional hairdresser and to correct the problem in itself is sadly amusing for some, but sadly rather distressing for others. The other thing as well is, even, shall we say, where partners have somehow managed to succumb to the temptation of cutting their own hair, and suddenly finding that perhaps one side of the hair doesn't match the other. And not deliberately, that is. So I think that this has caused tension amongst others. Partners probably now are starting to realise the value of such services. So, Clergyman Pete, I ask you, some people have said that it's strange that barbers and hair salons are allowed to interact with people, the public. Now, the whole point about having a haircut is that somebody is actually touching you. Now, COVID-19 has really, certainly the government, has stressed the idea that you have to socially distance. And all other types of firms, even in other beauty salons, have had to shut down. Shops have had to shut down, or non-essential shops. So their argument would be, well, why can't we open? Or why couldn't we have opened a bit earlier?
Well,
so
I mean,
want to ask about this point here. Are we saying that perhaps we've been a little bit tardy with opening up, and maybe what we should have done is give barbers and salons a little bit more license to still be careful, but at least to practice? My worry is, and we'll come on to my personal situation in a minute, but
yes, we will.
Indeed. Surely I would be slightly concerned about maybe some barber or hairstylist who hasn't practiced for several months.
Yes,
what say you about that?
I'd be more concerned about that. As to the transmission of the virus that causes COVID-19, no, I'm not in the slightest bit concerned about that. I think it's been overblown for reasons we've talked about on the podcast, and I've made videos about it on thevirtualvicar.com. You can take a look. So that, to me, that's not a concern. However, I would just say that if you are concerned about it, what actual medical advice is, as opposed to propaganda to make you scared, one might say it takes you've got to be at least 15 minutes in close contact with someone to transmit the virus. Well, it normally takes longer than that to cut hair. I'm just saying that. So if you are concerned about it, I'm not, for reasons I've explained elsewhere. But I think the other issue is more of a concern that you're coming straight out of semi-retirement. You've not been using your skills. You're coming out and you're straight into probably the busiest day ever with people coming back, or the busiest week ever even. So there are concerns. There might be a few nicked ears, maybe some poor hair. So, but I think by the end of the week they'll be up to speed. The loss of skill is one thing, but whether they'll actually reopen or not is another thing, isn't it? That's maybe another area we need to explore.
Yes. Now, the interesting thing is that many owners of beauty salons and barbers have sort of thought very carefully about how much business this would bring in. Now,
Yes.
Kelly Board is the owner of Hair and Beauty Gallery in Warwick, should anybody wish to go there, and opened her salon at midnight for a symbolic first cut of 2021, adding she is fully booked for the first few weeks. Now, the point here is that there is actually a backlog, to your point. So I guess the question is it does show the demand from the public on having this matter sorted out. I do sort of question whether this is really the most important thing in people's lives, but it does seem as though it's a high priority. So how long is it going to take for you to have your hair coiffured?
Me?
You haven't put in your booking yet.
I'll be there like a shot. No, well, the thing is, just to give away a bit of personal detail here, I go to a barber's. We don't have appointments and that sort of thing. You just rock up and then wait in a queue with lots of people. But yeah, my excellent barbers, and I do know they'll be pleased at the endorsement, is called Claire's. And he's a strange bloke, strange name, Claire, but you don't like to ask these. No, it is a woman owning a barber, so it's interesting. But interesting that should be the case. But I just take that a bit further. It's a gents' barbers, one by woman. In fact, by far the majority of workers in hair salons, in hairdressers, in barbers even, are women. So if there are going to be ones closing, if there are going to be businesses closing, and they'll report there was a recent survey, this was a hairdressing salon, so this wasn't specifically barbers, showed that a majority were thinking that. In fact, 60% were thinking of closing. So that's a huge number. That doesn't mean they will, but they were certainly considering it because things had got that bad. You can have people on furlough, etc., but maybe people move on, go to a different profession. You just can't be sure that they're going to be reopening, and that's going to disproportionately affect women. The precise number was 56% of salon owners were considering closing. 90% of salon workers are women.
Well, there you go. Well, now, here's a Mark and Pete thought. Now, I'm going to sort of lead it to the end, and you'll see why. Now, we've been talking about hair, but of course, obviously this open-up has also meant that pubs could open up. Now, a landlord and owner of a Kentish Bell pub in Bexley Heath, South London, said there was a sense of celebration in the early hours of Monday as it opened to midnight customers. The reason I reference this is, ironically, his name is Nicholas Hare. So how about the idea, here's a Mark and Pete idea, that you have a pint of beer whilst having your hair cut?
Yeah, I think that is a great idea. I mean, I've been to many of the hairdresser who supplies you with coffee. Yes. Why not beer? And if it doesn't turn out well, perhaps a stronger drink.
Exactly. Well, I mentioned a little bit my own personal situation, yes. And here's just a thought, just to sort of conclude the show. Just bear this in mind if you're in my situation. The culture of a sculptured scalp is to just follow the latest trends, unless you're losing all your hair and the remaining have split ends. So, unfortunately, folks, it doesn't affect me in quite the same way.
No, I think actually your hair has grown during lockdown. I mean, you had 3 hairs, you maybe have 5 now. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. It's the stress of the
Well, stress, as we know, can actually cause your hair to fall out. So maybe there'll be more baldies joining you in future.
Well, quite right, indeed. Well, listeners, what do you think? Are you glad that finally the doors are flinging open and you can probably have your hair coiffured in the latest trends? Or maybe you're just thinking, well, I'll hold on and just wait for that Yeti look to come into fashion. Why not log on to markandpete.com and let us know your thoughts? Well, we'll hear a little bit more follicle foibles and folly in the near future. Join us next time for more topical topics with Clergyman Pete and Businessman Mark.